And with that, I'll let Paul get started. And then anytime along, just let me know if you want us to see your map too.
Okay.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? Is the volume all right?
Sounds good.
Good. Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I am running for a fifth term to the Oregon Legislature. The reasons that I'm running really come down to three specific points. First is I believe public service is the most important thing for all of us to try to do right now when our nation is, let us just say, hanging in the balance in terms of whether we're going to keep a republic or not. I think that during times like this, it's the responsibility of people to step up and try to serve in the best capacity they know how. I believe over the last 8 years, I've served well, and I believe that I have more to offer in a fifth term. I also believe that you have to have a vision when you're in government, not just being somebody who thinks that government is too big or government shouldn't do this or shouldn't do that, but rather, what is the vision you have for your nation, your state, and your community? And I believe that Oregon's best days are ahead of us. We just have to find a way to navigate the current waters to get there. I also believe that as a leader, you need to have the capacity to do the things you say you're going to do. In contrast to my opponent, I have spent much of my adult life in and out of public life, learning how to navigate the rapids, learning how to build coalitions, learning how to pass legislation. I have a record in the legislature of, I think, keeping faith with our values in a way that is respectful. Over the last 8 years, we've made significant changes in terms of how we support our veterans. We have reformed the emergency management structure of response and recovery that actually prepared us for the fires this year. We have worked on education, both including more money for education with the Student Success Act, as well as pushing civics as an educational requirement. And in terms of the larger issues that we've done over the last 8 years, I played a significant role in passing the minimum wage, in passing paid leave, and in protecting our reproductive rights for women across the state of Oregon, regardless of where they come from. I actually believe that the four tenets of serving, guaranteed opportunity, a safe environment, protecting our basic rights to think, to act, to live, and stewardship are more important than ever before. And I think in contrast to a belief among our opponents that government is doing too much, I think we actually need to find a way for government to do even more. That leads us into what it is I'm hoping to do over the next several years. The first, we need to continue the work on education reform. There's a lot of misunderstanding about where we are in the nation, and quite frankly, however we compare, our most important role is to make sure our students are prepared for the 21st century. Second thing is, as a person who's currently working as a co-chair of the work group on the Public Defense Commission reforms, we need to continue to work on improving our justice system so that those who really are trying to change their life and make a better way have avenues to prove that. But before we even get to that place, to make sure that everybody in the state of Oregon has access to an effective defense, which right now 1,300 Oregonians do not, and we're trying to fix that. So I think that that's a priority we have to get done in the next session. I also believe we have to rethink how we're going to build a middle-class focused economy. And we, in many ways, we're still kind of floating on the work of the mid-1950s and 60s. We have to restructure how it is we provide services for a population that will live longer, have higher health concerns, need more education and training over the course of their life to compete, and require an infrastructure system that is aligned with our values and recognition of a changing climate. We do those things through looking at the tax system and finding a way to encourage small business, and I mean actual small business, not those who claim it, and working families. Some of the bills that I hope to push forward are making it easier to get to patents for new inventors, finding spaces where people who are in the CTE programs in our K-12 schools have access to taking new ideas to the market, mentoring both working families as well as small businesses, making sure that the lessons earned and learned by our seniors are passed on to generation who, because of COVID, has a lot more disconnections than previous generations. We have a lot of work to do, and I don't promise to be able to do all of it, but I will tell you that I will do everything I can to make sure we move the ball forward. I think I can look you in the eye and say we've done that over the last 8 years. I believe that the secret to Oregon is a center-left strategy moving forward, and I hope to be able to be a part of that. I just appreciate your consideration and your support. This race is a little tougher than we had anticipated because of workforce issues, because of the changes in the district, and because, quite frankly, just of the ways in which our opponents have decided that the laws are for everybody but them. We're not going to stoop to their level, but that means we're going to have to fight harder and be more active. And that's why I need your help tonight.
Cool. Thanks. You've done this before, haven't you, Paul? No, it really shows. Your experience really shines through. I love that. Do we have any questions for Paul? I know I didn't look real specifically to see which people we might have from your district on the line this time. Marcia.
Paul, I really appreciate your service, and I appreciate your reaching out and what you've done with the transit district. One of the things that defines you and your opponents is the ability of women to make choices about their own body.
Yes.
And I can't say enough how much you need to make sure that you hammer home that point.
Thank you. I absolutely agree. I'm pro-choice, although I actually right now believe it's more than just choice. I think I'm saying it's pro-liberty because I happen to believe that the Supreme Court is, quite frankly, not satisfied with taking away women's reproductive rights, but literally trying to make women second-class citizens. And my mother and grandmother would be turning in their graves if I sat by and let that happen on my watch. So I'm committed to making sure that we do not go backward, that women and men have equal access and equal value and equal worth, and any attempts to undo that, I think we can, all of us. So thank you for bringing that issue up. I absolutely agree.
Lee.
Yeah. Hi, Paul.
Lee.
I really appreciate the work you're doing as a legislator. You have the ability to both work across the aisle and think innovatively. When you helped with the passage of the minimum wage law and came up or helped push the idea of district changes or district variation, it got that bill through, and that was a major breakthrough. The other one that I was really impressed with in the last session was when you got together with my Senator Fred Girod, who I rarely agree with, and passed the bill on requiring that kids get out of high school with civics under their belt. My grandkids often know nothing at all about how the government works. And I'm really worried at this point about this country. In working with the Neighborhood Leader Program, we have over 200 volunteers right now helping get out the vote here in Marion County. And the average age is about 75 in this group of people. And these kids are not getting involved. They aren't excited about civics and about government. And do you have some ideas, maybe like our friend John Kennedy did? Let's get the kids out to Peace Corps and actions like that, and volunteer corps and forest corps, and get kids engaged.
Yes, sir, I do. We have actually 3 or 4 different initiatives that are currently either proposals in the hopper for legislative council or in research. So I'll begin with the ones that are in the hopper. We basically pushed in the last session the beginning of a conversation to transform the Oregon Youth Corps back into a functional effort that was aligned with President Biden's idea of putting more folks out planting trees and in the wilderness. We secretly call it the Discovery Corps. That's kind of what we're working on. And the idea is to use some of the workforce dollars that the governor put aside to get people into, or I should say, out of office spaces, but into the mountains and into the streams, giving them experience and then actually getting them into state agencies with internships and paid internships and other programs to be able to get those folks who want to be outside working on things early and get them lined up with jobs. The second thing that we're hoping to do is to look at expanding that to also including putting frozen fish back into the rivers, the old salmon sickles, and trying to work with some of the wildfire mitigation projects on where we can put some people who maybe aren't necessarily young, but are looking for a second chance. Maybe folks who are in the under 25, but out of high school, looking for a second chance, maybe had some issues with the law that weren't violent offenses, in trying to find ways to get them active and involved that way. In terms of civics, one of the things we're trying to do is really encourage, and this will include some monies that we need to set aside, but encourage programs like YMCA Youth in Government, encourage Boys and Girls State, encourage locally developed efforts so people can actually get to know their local governments, and then internship programs at that local level that have basically the magic, if you will, of somebody who's doing something political with something in their neighborhood so they can see that direct connection. The last point actually is a little bit unique, but we're trying again to put the bill together to get the money. And it would actually encourage young retireds, people who have retired but have time and energy to give, and basically through a property tax incentive, encourage 10 to 15 hours in the schools or in local programming that is focused on connecting people, not just to government, but also downloading life experience and the value and the understanding of what government has done in a person's life. I've seen this work in Alexandria, Virginia. There are 4 grandmothers basically who are paid to simply give hugs and talk to the kids as they go into T.C. Williams High School. But because they're grandmothers, they can call young men into account and tell them to pull their pants up and walk a little straighter and do things, but they do it with a hug and a smile. There's a missing connection for young people. And I happen to believe that bringing young seniors into the lives of a lot of these folks will not only open the door to conversations about civics in the bigger world, but will give them a better, stable, sustainable way of looking at the world. So those are the 4 or 5 things that we're looking at that are different levels of legislation. Susan McLean, who's a leader on the education front, we talk a lot about how to find money to do these things. I anticipate that moving forward, at least some of them will be done on a pilot basis, but I'm hoping to be able to expand beyond that.
Wow, that is awesome. Thank you, Lee, for a great question, and thanks, Paul, for a fabulous response. Thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
really, really great
Thank
to
you, Lee.
hear. Robert Hussman.
Hey, Paul, forgive a candidate to candidate question here, and let me explain my assumptions as I go through the question. First assumption is that there is a party that wants to make government function better for the people, and another party that wants the government to strip government for parts. You are a part of the former group.
Yes.
Second assumption is I actually was an intern once upon a time at Oregon Parks and Recreation Department, Go State Parks, and I definitely appreciate the work they do. There are a lot of capable state employees working very hard behind the scenes in some very thankless jobs that make the state of Oregon run well.
Yep.
I do believe, unfortunately, that the party that wants to strip the government for parts continues to attack Democratic candidates and politicians along the lines of being unable to effectively translate some of their policies and better motivations and aims toward the workings of state government, to
Yes.
the point that occasionally we do struggle in the state of Oregon with capacity. I don't think that's a secret. There's constantly an effort to improve the capacity of state government to work well. My question to you, sir, is what are some ways that you can see the state legislature doing in the immediate future to bridge some of that gap, even if it's small things that help to make those effective policies and those best ideals be put forward to a greater extent than they are currently?
It's a very insightful analysis. What I will say is, I'll paraphrase, how do we make government actually function when many of the ideas and suggestions we get passed into bills never get executed? And the issue is, we need 3 things. We need a leader that's willing to hold agencies accountable, and accountable means that people actually get fired. not fired publicly and then privately moved to another agency so they can continue to make really poor decisions. I believe that two of the three governors that are, or two of the three candidates that are running for governor will do that. I believe with the right motivation, Tina Kotek will be very good at doing that because she, quite frankly, knows more than most where the not so good agency directors are. However, the second thing is oversight from the legislature. And I will give you a couple of examples of how, for good or for ill, I practice what I preach. The agencies that are over or that were related to the Veterans and Emergency Preparedness, the Oregon Military Department and the Oregon Department of Veterans Affairs, their agency directors loathe me with the passion of 1,000 suns because I don't let them get away with anything. And if I can't move it legislatively, I'll go to the press. And if I can't go to the press, I'll go to their unions. And if I can't go to their unions, I'll go to the governor. And when it came to military department, we were able to make some legislative reforms in House Bill 2927 that moved emergency management out of the military so it can actually function better. On veterans issues, we have had a long struggle with the new director, but now she actually, having killed the omnibus bill last session, her policy option packages this time actually reflect the bills we wanted to pass. So the funny part is, in this case, letting her think it was her idea is the key to actually making it work. We were also able to prevent her from effectively firing 7 people who run the ORVET program because we found out that if she was putting together a request for proposal for just technology, it was actually drafted in a way that it wasn't just technology. It was actually going to outsource servicing those loans to a company in Texas with a C- Better Business Bureau rate. So the key for a legislator is to hold agency people accountable up to and including making them very frustrated. The other part is good leadership at the governor's level. But the third part, and this is the part where after 7 years, I was appointed finally to the full Ways and Means Committee. My hope is to eventually make it to the E-Board. When you're on Ways and Means, because you have the budget, or as I like to remind the agency directors, you have their air hose that you can step on, you suddenly have their attention. And there are certain agencies that know that they are too bureaucratic, and there are some agencies that don't know it. I think at this point, the lesson of whoever wins the governorship, and certainly whoever wins contested legislative races, is that most of Oregon probably wants government. Most of Oregon probably believes that government's necessary, but we're awful tired of being embarrassed by stupidity. And an example of what happened recently with the 3,000 air conditioners for $5 million is just another case in point. So it is absolutely true. And as a person who is looking to run for a good time as opposed to a long time, my point is I'm looking forward to trying to make the bureaucracy answer, because I don't think Oregonians are going to be patient much longer, nor should they be.
Wow. Excellent. Thank you. Great response. Paul, just to, you've been in office. So when I say give us your best elevator speech, I mean, you've given us, 8 years of an elevator speech and the action behind it. So I feel like I'd be, it seems kind of unnecessary, but if you'd like to leave us with any thoughts, when we've got a lot of neighborhood leaders on the line, what can you do to kind of, we're out there knocking on doors here. We'll be knocking on doors here over the next couple of weeks when the ballots drop. Just in general, what other messages do you think we should be trying to communicate to voters?
So there's a message to voters and there's a message for the folks who are going to doors. The message for voters are Oregon can continue to move ahead, but we need people who understand the importance of both vision and capacity. Simply going with the bumper sticker answer isn't going to get us a better Oregon. Being against something isn't enough. It isn't a vision. That's what I would say to people at the door. What we need are people that understand the hard work ahead and have demonstrated experience. And if they can't cut it, then don't send them. But if they have actually provided They have actually kept their word. Give them some more time to turn the boat around. Internally, the message is Brian Clem, who for a long time played a major role in the legislature, is no longer there. Peter Courtney is gone. I'm now on the full Ways and Means. Between Deb and I, and hopefully more candidates, but certainly between us because of seniority and myself specifically because of seniority, with the new Speaker of the House, we have a voice that we haven't had on the House side for a long time. Even when Brian was at his height, he didn't have a speaker that was a close friend. Dan Rayfield and I both ran for the Senate and lost. We know what it's like to lose. We know what it's like to win. We know what it's like to work across the aisle. And we both come from a military background that puts the mission first. Right now, I'm on the Public Defense Commission because Dan needed somebody who would actually ask hard questions. I'm kind of becoming one of his fixers. I'm not in leadership, but I'm the guy that he calls in to basically make negotiations happen. Why that's important to our district is we've got some really big, tough negotiations to have in the future about how we fund education. Do we continue to say, well, we'll just kind of get by, or do we actually go for the quality education model, which we know we should be funding, but we're still only at 80% of? When it comes to infrastructure, are we going to just look at highways and getting bigger? Or are we going to look at a way that's consistent with our values? Are we going to look at how we're going to build the middle class? Are we going to look at how to find alternative energies? And if we do it, how are we going to do it in a way that is fair to all parts of the state, but doesn't move us backward? Those kinds of things are really at stake in this election. If I lose, seniority goes a little bit out. I think right now we've spent the last 8 years preparing for. So that's my internal and external look.
Thank you so much, Paul. That was really valuable. I appreciate that so much. Thanks so much. And we'll be seeing you soon. I think we're having an auction coming up, so I think you're going to be a part of that. It'll be good to see your face on that screen as well. Best of luck with your race, and it's always a delight to have you with us. So thanks so much. We appreciate it. Appreciate your